Welcome friends to Physics in 20 minutes. In this video, we are going to talk about force, basic type of forces, Newton's first law, non-inertial frame of reference, Newton's second law, Newton's third law, components of force, and free body diagrams. Prerequisite for this video is you need to watch video number 7 to 11, which are on vectors. The reference book I'm going to use for this video is University Physics by Young and Friedman. So we start with a force. We are all experienced with force in day-to-day life. When you push or pull an object, we say that we are applying a force. The example is these two figures. You can push an object or you can pull an object. So if you have to define the force, how do we define it? We say a force is an interaction between two objects. That was the first definition of the force that you have studied in school, early school. But when you take the gravity into consideration, then this is the interaction between an object and its environment. A force is a vector quantity and it has a magnitude as well. So we are all familiar with the common types of forces. So a normal force, so if an object is kept in contact with a surface, then the surface exerts a force on the object. And this force is normally called as normal force. It is perpendicular to the surface. Apart from the normal force, the surface may exert a frictional force. So if the object is trying to move, say towards right, then there will be a frictional force towards the left. The third common type of force that we experience is the pull of gravity or weight. It acts vertically downward. So if you leave a small object in air, you will find that it will fall downward, it will get accelerated downward. So this is the weight of the object. And the next is the tension force or the pulling force. So if you pull an object by something, it is the tension which is responsible. So even if you here in this diagram, it is shown that you are pulling the object by a thread, so tension is there in the thread. But in the previous diagram where you are pulling the object by the hand or pushing the object by the hand, the tension is created in the bone structure of the hand. So that is the fourth basic type of force that we experience. Forces span in large magnitudes. We know that Newton is the unit of force, and you can see that the sun's gravitational force on earth is enormous. Look at the 10 power, it's 10 power 22 Newton. But in this table, as you come down, the force decreases. And the gravitational attraction between proton and electron in hydrogen atom is 10 power minus 47 Newton. So forces can vary from a very large amount, very large quantity to a very small magnitude. What is 1 Newton? So 1 Newton is a weight of medium sized apple. These are apple season. If you eat an apple, if you hold an apple in your hand, you think about the force. It is around 1 Newton for a medium sized apple. Even if you have your mobile phone, if your mobile phone is around 100 gram or so, your weight of the mobile phone will be around 1 Newton if it is between 1 and 1.5 Newton. So please know that. Forces follow the superposition principle. So we know what is superposition principle. If you have more than one force applied at a point, then the vector sum of all the forces acts like a single force. So example, in this diagram I have two forces F1 and F2. I can replace F1 and F2 completely by R. So even if this force works, it will produce the same impact on the body. So I would generally in vector language call it as vector R is equal to vector F1 plus vector F2. So these are just two forces, but if there are more than two forces, even then that principle applies. Vector R is equal to sigma F, which is equal to F1 plus F2 plus F3 plus dot dot dot. So if there are more than one forces present, then the net force is given by the vector sum of all the forces. And in that case, the component of individual forces will also add up to give you the component of resultant forces. So the x component of all the forces will add up to give you x component of resultant. Y component of all the forces will add up to give you y component of resultant. We can see it in a vector diagram. If this is my vector F1, then its x component is F1x. If this is my vector F2, then the x component is F2x. So sum total of these two components F1x and F2x will give me the x component of the resultant vector R. Similarly, F1y and F2y, which are the y component of F1 and F2, will add up to give me Ry, which is the y component of vector R. The resultant of vector R is given by root of Rx square plus Ry square. So that brings us to Newton's first law. So Newton's first law of motion says a body acted on by no net force moves with the constant velocity, which may be zero, and zero acceleration. So here the important word is net. Net means resultant or sum total. So if sum total of all the forces on a body is zero, then the body will move with a constant velocity which may be zero. What does it mean? It means that the body can be at rest or it is moving with a constant velocity. Velocity is a vector quantity. So when I say constant velocity, that means it's both magnitude as well as direction are fixed. So if sigma f or net force is zero, the net force is represented by sigma f, then we say that body is in equilibrium. Again, if sigma f is zero, then its x and y components are also zero. So here is an example. For example, on this puck, there are two forces acting from two sticks. The one force is acting from this side and one force is acting on this side. And the sum total of both the forces is equal to 0. And therefore acceleration is also equal to 0. So whenever there is an equilibrium, no net force, remember individual forces can work but total force is 0, then we say that the first law is applied. It defines non-inertial frame of reference for us. So if you look at in this first column of drawing, there is a rail wagon which is on a railway track. There is a person standing here. The person is on skates. There are wheels in his shoes. A person is at rest. Rail wagon velocity is initially 0. Now suppose if the rail wagon velocity increases because it experiences an acceleration. So what happens is the person stays at its own position. The person's position does not change. What changes is the rail wagon moves forward, person stays there. Remember, since he is on the wheels, skates, the friction between the person and the road surface is negligible. You can see that in this diagram, he stays wherever he is all throughout, but the rail wagon moves forward. How do you describe the situation from outside? So from outside, you will say the person is at his own position while the rail wagon is moving forward. How is that person going to describe the situation? The person is going to say that the rail wagon is accelerated in this side because his distance between the other end of the rail wagon and him will go on decreasing. So this distance you can see is decreasing continuously. Similarly, if a brake is applied, suppose he is standing on the other direction, initially moving with the velocity v, if suddenly brakes are applied, then the wagon will slow down, but he will continue to move with that velocity. So he will continue moving ahead and he will go and hit the other end of the wagon. So he would say that some unknown force is working on him and this force is pushing him ahead to the wagon. So this is our general experience. Whenever if a car suddenly accelerates, we in the car we experience a backward jerk, and whenever a car takes a strong brake, we get a forward jerk. Typically, it is described as a pseudo force because the origin of this force for this person is unknown. He cannot find out who is applying this force, and therefore he will describe it as a pseudo force. But you can see that this pseudo force appears only in his frame of reference, which is a non inertial frame of reference. If you're observing the situation from outside, then you can see that he is always in inertial frame of reference. Here he is in the rest, and here he is moving with constant velocity. So going ahead, if it's a circular motion, so again we have a similar type of situation. I have a rail wagon which is going on a curved path. You can see person is standing here. So this time the acceleration, because of the circular motion, the acceleration is towards centripetal. So this person who is standing here will remain standing in this line. So you can see that the person is on a straight line. He moves from here to here and then from here to here. So he's moving on a straight line while the wagon is going in a circular track. So if you observe the situation from outside, you will say the person is moving at a constant speed in a straight line while the wagon is moving on a circular track. What he will say, he is first standing on to the right side of the wagon. Now he is standing close to the left side of the wagon. And therefore he would say that a centrifugal force is working who is throwing him outside. So he describes a force whose origin is not known to him, which he would call it as a pseudo force. In this case, it is called as a centrifugal force, which arises only in his frame of reference, which is accelerated frame of reference or non-inertial frame of reference. So that brings us to Newton's second law of motion. First law tells us what happens if the net force is zero. Second law tells us what happens if the net force is non-zero. So if the net external force acts on a body, then the body experiences acceleration. So this is like a cause-effect equation. If you have a cause, if you have a force, then there will be an acceleration. The other way to read it as, if there is an acceleration, there has to be a force. The direction of acceleration is same as the direction of the net force. the mass of the body times the acceleration of the body equals the net force vector. So the net force sigma F is written as mass into acceleration. Remember, mass is a scalar. So the direction of acceleration is same as the direction of the net force. Acceleration can be determined by dividing the net force by the mass. Just like force is a vector and it can be resolved into three components, acceleration is also a vector. So this equation can be written in three dimensions. Sigma fx is max and so on and so forth. Remember, the forces in x direction are responsible in acceleration in x direction. Forces in y direction are responsible for acceleration in y direction. Forces in z direction are responsible in acceleration in z direction. We are in a position now to define 1 Newton. By Newton's second law, sigma F is equal to ma. Sigma F is said to be 1 Newton if mass is 1 kilogram and acceleration is also 1 meter per second square. That means 1 Newton is that force which introduces an acceleration of 1 meter per second square in a mass of 1 kilogram. So 1 Newton is equal to 1 kg meter per second square. 1 Newton is the amount of net force that gives an acceleration of 1 meter per second squared to a body with a mass of 1 kilogram. What happens if same force acts on two bodies with different masses? So you can see that if the left hand side is same, that is force is same, then the right hand sides will also be same. So it will become m1a1 is equal to m2a2, or m2 by a1 will give you a1 by a2. That means the mass is inversely proportional to acceleration, or this way. That means a body which has a larger mass will accelerate less. The body with a smaller mass will accelerate further. What are the units in question? So SI unit is 1 Newton, CGS unit is 1 dyne, which is 1 gram centimeter per second square, which is 10 power minus 5 Newton. 1 pound, in British system, pound is a unit of force. 1 pound is 1 slug feet per second square, or in Newton 1 pound is 4.448221615 Newton. How are the mass and weight are related? So mass is a scalar quantity, weight is a vector quantity. Weight of an object is given by mass into acceleration due to gravity. Gravity direction is in downward direction. Therefore, the weight also works in the downward direction. Weight is a force, remember. Magnitude of the weight is given by mg. If there is one Newton's law which is very popular, then it is Newton's third law. To every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. A body A exerts a force on body B, which we normally call as an action force. Then body B exerts a force on body A, which is called a reaction force. These two forces have the same magnitude but are in opposite direction. An important thing to be noted down, that these two forces act on different bodies. So for example, if a football is kicked, it's interaction between the two bodies, the foot or shoes and the football. So shoes applies force on the football, which we may call as action force, and the football applies a force on the shoes, which is called as reaction force. This force can be called as F A on B, and this force can be called as F B on A. That is force of B on A. Now these two forces are always equal in magnitude and opposite in direction. So we can write in vector form F A on B is equal to minus vector F B on A. The minus sign shows that the forces are opposite. Equal sign shows that forces are equal in magnitude. So let's take some of the examples of Newton's third law of motion. So I have this situation where on ground, earth surface, there is a table, and on table there is an apple kept there. So one of the pairs of Newton's third law is the gravity, earth is going to pull the apple down, and even apple is going to pull the earth up by Newton's law of gravitation, which we will see in a different chapter. So I have these two forces, F earth on apple and F apple on earth, which are equal and opposite to each other. Then other pair of forces are the contact forces. These apple and the table are kept in contact. So there will be normal reaction as we have discussed earlier. Table will apply a normal reaction on the apple in the upward direction. Apple will apply a normal reaction on the table in the downward direction. This is another positive negative pair of forces. If you remove the table, imagine that if the table is removed and the apple is there itself, then these two pairs will vanish, normal reaction, because the contact has been removed. But the earth on apple and apple on earth will still stay. These two forces are still going to work. Remember that. That brings us to almost the last topic of the day. That is a free body diagram. So in free body diagrams, what we do is we reduce the complicated bodies to a point masses or to a point. So for example, in this diagram, in this image, you can see that a basketball player is in air. So if you have to draw now, his body is a very complicated body. There are various components. We are not bothered about how these various components are moving, but we will reduce the entire body into a point. So when you draw a free body diagram, you take the body as a point, and on that point we will say that his weight is working in the downward direction. From the point, you show your force vector. So put the tail of your force vector at that point and use the direction standards to show the vector. The weight works downward, so it will be drawn in the downward direction. Similarly, for the other player who is standing on the ground, we can consider this player also as a point. Then there are two vectors which are working. One is working in the downward direction, which is his weight. This person is in contact with the surface. So surface will apply a reaction force which will go in the upward direction. So that will be working here in the upward direction. Both these vectors has to be drawn with their tail point touching the point which you have drawn. So such diagrams are called as free body diagrams, where you don't bother about the actual structure of the body, but you take the entire body as a point mass and then you solve the problem. How to take components of the forces? You can see that in this example, this runner is pushing the block in towards this direction, left direction. So the block will apply a reaction force in this direction, diagonally. So the forces on the runner are weight of the runner. The weight of the runner is going to work in the downward direction, and this force is going to work diagonally in one direction. Now this force can be split or resolved into two components, one along the horizontal, which is f of x, and one along the vertical, which is f of y. So if you know this angle here, suppose this angle here is theta, then this is f of x will be f cos theta and f of y will be f sin theta, because it is going to be equal to opposite component of theta. Once you have resolved vector f into two components, then the vector f ceases to exist. You don't have to use it. I have placed some review questions here which we are going to take in the next class.
Thank you.